Hey, it's Sol and it's Friday, so, news. Yay! Our top story of the week comes with the opening of Mythic Raids in the Emerald Nightmare as well as the LFR difficulty. The World Race had started, and then it ended. After what must have been 17 pretty grueling hours, Russian guild Exorsus was able to snag the world first spot, crushing some of the more likely contenders like Method and Serenity while they were sleeping. Now there's a lot to digest from how quickly Exorsus or just anybody was able to get this first kill, so I'm going to have more on that later. Like I said, the Raid Finder or LFR version of the raid had opened up this week as well, inviting some criticism about certain things, namely the exclusiveness of a certain skin that could only be acquired by completing the raid in normal or higher difficulty. I spoke a little bit about this on Wednesday, so if you're interested in my thoughts, go ahead and click somewhere and take a quick look. In some 7.1 news, a new build was deployed, and there are a lot of little changes and tweaks. There were some number changes, but those mostly had to do with some of the recent hotfixes. A few little gems to note is that now we'll be able to hide our belt and get one step closer to sexy time. The other changes related to a video that I posted earlier about the Blood of Sargeras. A vendor is going to be introduced in the 7.1 patch that originally allowed you to trade one Blood of Sargeras for 20 of almost every mat, which by my estimation would probably cause a really big economic impact on the game. This most recent build dropped it down, so now you trade in one Blood of Sargeras and you can get 10 of a primary crafting material and 3 of the higher end stuff, namely the Starlight Rose and the, I think, Leyline Shard, the enchanting thing. So this makes me pretty happy. I still have quite a bit of Blood of Sargeras, so I'm still going to end up trading it in because, well, I have nothing else to use it on at the moment. But I do think it's cool that for the most part Blizzard is trying to not be too heavy-handed with this change and allow the market for the most part to control the pricing. That said, I'm going to spend all my Blood of Sargeras on Foxflower because Foxflower is the devil. And same with Nomi. This week marks the return of weekly events, and we're starting with arena skirmishes. And yay, whoop-de-doo, I probably get more stuff doing towers and, other PvP world quest objectives, but there are other weekly events to note, and I'll at least mouth them off really quick. We have world quest bonuses, where every world quest that you complete gives you additional rep on top of what you're already getting. There's time walking dungeons that we all know and love. Unfortunately, no time walking raids yet, and I don't think they've talked about doing time walking stuff for more recent expansions yet. There's battlegrounds that we all know and love, and then we have the Legion dungeon events, which are a little bit different from how the Warlords of Draenor events were going. Unlike before, where you had an objective to complete, I think it was 4, maybe 5 mythic dungeons, and then you get like a cool little prize thing at the end. This time, every time you complete a dungeon, you get a piece of bonus loot whenever you complete the last boss. Now, I think something that hasn't quite been clarified yet is how this is going to affect Keystone dungeons. Our main thing of today kind of goes back to the world, the mythic stuff, the world first race, having started and ended in what, like a day, 24 hours, 26 hours, something like that. And there are quite a few legitimate concerns coming from players saying, hey, this is like really fast, is the raid too easy, was the last boss undertuned, things like that. And while as of this recording there's only about 5 or so verified kills of Xavius, it doesn't quite paint the picture of whether or not this tier is too easy or not. I think it's more than likely that Xavius is just undertuned. After all, folks that were having a hard time with Cenarius, and then after the Cenarius was done, boom, Xavius seemed to be knocked out in just, well, however many pulls that was. So there's kind of a lot to say, and I'm probably going to end up being ranty. My thoughts on this are, they're pretty broad and kind of disorganized, but I'll edit and do the best that I can. Now, first off, it's my opinion that when it comes to mythic raiding, it's something that is tuned and designed not for the top 0.1% of raiders, because when it comes to mythic raiding, you're already catering to a very, very small part of the audience. So from that, it would make sense that as a designer, you would want to capture as much of that particular pool as possible. I think after a few weeks or a month or maybe even more, when we look at the data and look at the number of guilds and number of players that have earned a mythic Xavius achievement, that's going to give us a much better gauge of whether or not this is easy, because it's important important to note that, like I said earlier in the video, Exorsus spent 17 straight hours trying to kill Xavius. I'm sure they rotated people in and out. Oh god, hopefully they did. That'd be like a humanitarian disaster. But you gotta realize that when it comes to the world first race, people are going to perform at a level that seems kind of inhuman. Like, I know that my guild's casual, but I think we've rated less total than Exorcist did in that one boss. So it is kind of sad that the best players in the world were able to down it so quickly. It leaves an obvious impression, as you can see, from the news, and hell, I'm making, I'm talking about it in a video. When you look past that though, past the perception of difficulty based on what the 1% did, and look at what what the majority of players are experiencing, then you got to ask yourself this question again: is it too easy? I don't know. I'm sure a big factor that helped influence the speed of Exorcist's kill came in the form of farming all these mythic, all these keystone dungeons and getting legendaries and other high-end gear. This is the first expansion where there are, well, I guess virtually unlimited opportunities to get higher end gear. I remember in previous expansions, I had there were a lot of people that were going in with blues, and it definitely wasn't the case this time around. And this ease of gear has kind of spilled over to the rest of the population. I'll talk a little bit about my guild, because my guild is probably at, part of a larger pool than the world first. So with my guild being kind of a bunch of casuals, we were able to complete the Emerald Nightmare raid in just 1 week. So that basically amounted to, I think it was 5, maybe 6 hours of raiding. And I'm not the type to call anything easy, but in our first, that first boss, Nythendra, or whatever her name is, on our first night, the first pull, usually what I like to do is just not do any prep. I just want to run in and kind of learn as I go. Screw the dungeon journal, screw all the videos. Let's just dive right in. But we killed it, and I was kind of disappointed by that. But a big part of that is that we had kind of a lot of gear. Some of us had gear that was higher than 850, so it did feel kind of awkward to just kind of steamroll the place and, well, finish it in that 1 week. As for this week though, kind of a white fest. We couldn't even kill the first boss. Well, we were close, but it was kind of tough. I mean, 2 of my best healers, they weren't available that night. A bunch of disconnects. Heck, I got disconnected. It was pretty rough. At the same time, I'm like, yeah, that's more like it. This is the kind of challenge that I'm trying to look for. But when I look at it from other perspectives though, there's me and there's other people that will see like these people that have progressed so far, and it kind of gives that negative perception of what's wrong with us. Are we doing something wrong? Are my players not good enough? Are we not trying hard enough to farm for gear like they are? And I think it's important to not make those kinds of comparisons, because ultimately you're just not going to feel very good about yourself and your own performance relative to those at the top. Or even worse, if you are playing at a solid and competitive level and you happen to run into randoms that just don't perform as well as you, does it mean that you're just that good, or that they are just that bad? Or is it a combination of both? I mean, what are you doing in the same party in the first place, huh? But anyway, back to gear. Just like how gear was readily available for the most elite players, they're available for everybody. So there's lots of opportunities to get gear. It's bound to come to the point where things just feel like they're easier because we're starting to outgear stuff a little bit more. Exorcist and the other top guilds were doing some crazy stuff like farming keystone dungeons like day in and day out in the hopes of getting legendaries, and it did pay off. It was reported that a bunch of them did in fact have legendary gear, and I guess we can be sure that it did influence their performance, probably a meaningful way. Thankfully though, it is early and it is the first raid. We can probably guess that by the time the Trial of Valor raid comes out or the Nighthold raid comes out, when people can and probably will be able to equip 2 legendaries, we might see a more balanced race when it comes to the race for gear, maybe. Although you could be sure that somewhere in Blizzard's offices, someone's getting yelled at or someone's kind of getting pounded for leaving Xavius under tune, then chances are they're going to be working their tails off to make sure that the Nighthold is as brutal as possible. There's probably more than I would, should say, so if I do, you can take a look at my blog. I might do something over the weekend, so if you feel free to take a look. I should probably get out of here and try to find the time to farm mythic keystone dungeons on my own, and in my hopes for getting my first legendary. Come on. So in the next maybe week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe a little bit longer, okay, maybe at some point I'm going to try and do kind of a higher quality video essay sort of deal. I'm still trying to learn some stuff in Photoshop and still trying to work on making some really solid quality content for you guys that's worth, not just hitting a like and a sub for, but worth sharing and worth, showing to other people. In the meantime, though, your likes and subs are very, very, very much appreciated. I'm definitely reliant on those right now. So thanks so much for the support that you're giving me right now, and I hope that you'll continue to support me in the future. But yeah, it's time to get out of here. You guys have a good weekend, and I'll see you guys Monday. Stay breezy, guys. Bye.